Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Taken on its own, it's one of the weirdest concepts that anyone could ever really think up of. About 4 turtles who have become mutated and taught ninjutsu by their equally mutated father figure Splinter, and their life within the sewers of New York City. And yet it's become a multi-million-dollar franchise that has several comics, cartoons, movies, and video games under its belt. Hell, I could probably make a video that is 2 hours long about these 4, and we would still not cover everything there is to talk about them. But when it comes to starting to get into a franchise, being spoiled for options is sometimes a bad thing. When you've got so many variations of the same universe, each with their own quirks and storylines, it's easy to get bogged down into not wanting to attempt to get into the concept at all when you feel like there's such a huge mountain to climb. So let's make things a little bit easier by taking a stone off that mountain and focusing on that entirely, as we talk today about one of my first introductions to these characters with the original live-action film, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Hello ladies and gentlemen, I am your ever-friendly Pokeprof, and welcome back to Fascinating Fiction. To start things off, I think the one major aspect that I've got to bring up about the movie is just how, well, drastic of a difference the look and feel of it is compared to what was popular for the series at the time. This film came out in 1990, a good 3 years after the cartoon had made out the 4 reptiles here to be household names. And yet, despite how insanely popular the show was, the idea for the movie was to go into a bit of a darker approach. While on the one hand, I like to point out just how Hollywood loves to take a franchise and make it grittier for the sake of keeping an audience interested, in the case of the TMNT, this is actually more faithful to the original source. I'm not kidding here, the original TMNT wasn't the cartoon from the 80s, but a black and white comic created by Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird that was originally intended to just be a single comic and, let's be entirely honest, a parody of other comics that was going on at the time, in particular Frank Miller's run of the comic Daredevil. What makes the movie interesting is that while it does indeed pull elements from these comics for the majority of its structure, it actually uses the cartoon's stories and character elements for some of the cast, most particularly April O'Neil being a news reporter. It's apparently that job as a reporter that gets April in trouble, as not only is she forced to be the opening exposition to get the audience up to snuff on what some of the plot of the story is, said exposition also comes back to attack her in the form of the thieves who have been going around stealing just about everything they can get their hands on. It doesn't last long as the only light source gets taken out, and when it comes back on, we see the thieves all tied up. We then cut down to the sewers to meet up with the titular turtles, Leonardo, Michelangelo, and Donatello, all basking in their first successful venture to the surface, while Raphael can't help but feel upset as he wasn't able to leave the scene without leaving some evidence. This kind of goes alongside the whole mythos of the ninja, about being able to strike from the shadows and drift away without a trace. I don't know how much of this is actually real or faithful to the real-life ninjas. That's something you would have to go ask Gaijin Goomba about, but it still offers a wonderful view of the characters and how they act and were developed. Regardless, the actual main character of the movie, despite being named Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, would actually be April. She is the first character that we hear in the start of the film, the one who's the focus when it comes to growth and change, and the one who ends up going through the most by the end of the film's runtime. It's through her that we get to have a real person's perspective of both the events going on around her and the turtles themselves, with Raphael being the one who she's closest to, and probably the turtle that gets the most focus out of the film. Continuing on with the movie, we quickly find out that the ones doing all the stealing are under the control of the Foot Clan and the Shredder. This is probably the weakest point of the entire film, considering the fact that we don't really get a lot of the backstory as to why the Shredder is doing this, or anything about him that isn't told to us as part of Splinter's backstory later on. At best, we can guess that he's just trying to gain power in New York and is using the Runaways and Misfits to do it. But we don't have any large goals from the Shredder outside of the fact that he doesn't want April reporting on them. But being the gal she is, April fights back and ends up getting saved by Raphael, which leads to the ongoing growth of the film as the Shredder tries his best to find her and the Turtles, eventually kidnapping Splinter to do so. All this leads up to an attack on April's apartment while the Turtles are staying there, eventually burning it down. It's here when you notice the ebb and flow of the movie, where we get scenes of action and intensity that are then followed by moments of quiet reflection and calm. One of the best examples of this actually happens a bit earlier in the film. We see Raphael get into a small scuffle with supporting character Casey Jones, giving the audience some action. This is then followed by a scene of Raph talking to Splinter, going on about how he's always stood alone from his brothers. This is a flow into a quiet moment that is seen again as the Turtles, April, and Casey live out on a farm to recover and heal after the fight that leads to April losing her home. It's something I bring up because I've noticed that in a lot of movies and TV shows, you get this feel of, you've got to go fast, you can't stop or you'll lose the audience's attention. But it's actually the other way around. The constant action, the non-stop noise and movement, that's what I've found bores most audiences, and myself included. You need the quiet moments, slow and soft times where folks can take a breather to process what's happened. It amazes me to say that the original TMNT movie does that a lot better than most of the other films I can mention within the last 10 years. Of course, this is also the same film that has it so that the Turtles don't even know who's been sending the Foot Clan after them until the last 10 minutes. And the fact that they didn't know that he's the one that also took Splinter, or that he's Oroku Saki, a character who was introduced when Splinter details his own history about his life in Japan. While I can easily see why some people might be upset that the Turtles really don't even meet the Shredder till the tail end of the film, I actually do love this little moment when it's revealed to them just who he really is.
It's him.
This is a wonderful moment when you really think about it. The Turtles have been raised by Splinter since they were babies, and while the four refer to him mostly as Master, there is rarely a moment that goes by where you don't hear Splinter refer to them as his sons. And as his children, they would know better than anyone else about their father's past. Sure, it may be a bit of a cop-out since we, the audience, don't see the Turtles getting this knowledge within the actual movie, but it's a small detail that fleshes out our characters, showing that what we're seeing on screen wasn't the full detail of their adventures, just this particular one. It goes even further when Splinter is the one who ends up defeating the Shredder instead of the Turtles, as it's the end to his own story instead of that of his sons, avenging his fallen owner. On the production side, there's actually a bit of interesting stuff going on in the background, like how the fact that this was an independent film. I'm actually quite serious here. It's kind of hard to believe now, what with how big and marketable the Turtles have become, but originally none of the big studios wanted to touch this movie for its production. Disney, MGM, Warner Brothers, hell, even Paramount, who would gain the rights to the Turtles later on when Viacom bought them, didn't even want to support the original movie because they thought it would have been a flop despite the cartoon's popularity, with most people thinking that this was because of the Masters of the Universe movie that had flopped a few years prior. Despite it being an indie film though, they had enough money behind them that they were able to use Jim Henson's Creature Shop to build the Turtles, with it being reported that this was among the last things Henson himself worked on before his death. They were among the most complex creations that were ever produced at the time, which, considering the amount of movement and facial setup required, I could easily see how they would outclass any Muppet. Some of the other interesting things to know about this movie is the fact that all of the actors who played the Turtles actually had roles as side characters within the film itself. For example, the pizza man who delivers to Michelangelo, that's actually Mikey's suit actor. The others would do the same throughout the film, but the one to make the most interesting note about would actually be Raphael's suit actor, who is also the voice actor for him, which you can actually hear in his own on-screen appearance.
What the heck was that? Why? Oh, I don't know.
Probably the last thing I would like to talk about would be about some of the more interesting facts that the film would have, both with its release in other countries, as well as some of its special DVD features. This includes the fact that the Turtles actually had a name change in the UK, going by the Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles. For whatever reason, the UK and a lot of other countries in Europe did not like ninjas, and anything relating to them was pretty much removed. This included, of all things, Michelangelo's nunchaku, which were apparently the most ninja weapon among the cast. When it comes to the DVDs, my own copy is a bit of an older one, being part of the Ninja Turtle 3-pack. It doesn't really have all that many special features, being one of those super early DVDs to come out and be available. From what I've been able to research though, there's actually special versions that came out over in Germany and the UK, which had things like audio commentary from the original director, a 30-minute documentary about the making of the film, and even an additional ending when April tries to go and take the drawings she made of the turtle within the film and turn them into a comic book, alluding to the origins of the Turtles. Overall, I feel like that the smash hit that this movie became is what helped cement the Turtles as a fixture in media, since they've been big enough to pretty much always have a movie or TV show since the release of this film. And while it doesn't have as much packed into it compared to a lot of other more modern films, there's a bit of heart to this movie that I don't think a lot of people really give it credit for, and a care that I feel makes it really stand out. We will be talking about the Ninja Turtles again, because Lord knows I'm a nerd for this franchise. But I hope that I've done a good job to entertain you, and I'll do my best to do so again in the future. Until next time, stay frosty.